Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. It is December, it's the end of the year, but we still do have a couple weeks left of 2021, which means we have a little bit of time to squeeze in some last final reads. So I have a list of 5-ish books that I think you should read before the year ends. I wanted to choose books that weren't just the most popular romance books of the year. Like, I could just sit here and tell you to read The Love Hypothesis, The Spanish Love Deception, People We Meet on Vacation, which I mean, you guys should, because I did love those books, but I wanted to show some love to some less popular books, some less read books. I did also try to choose from different subgenres, but I'm going to skip fantasy romance this year, mostly because the ones that I did read were like in the middle of a series or the final book in a series, so I don't really have too many standalone fantasy romance recs from this year. But hey, if you want to read the Four Horsemen series by Laura Thalassa, you definitely should. The last book, Death, finally came out this year and I loved it so much. But here are the 5 romance releases from 2021 that I think you should read, and I'm also including a series and also a bonus book, because why not? My first 2 recommendations are contemporary romances. This first one is one that is fairly similar in vibes to The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Heart Smart by Emily Jane came out earlier this year. I listened to it in audio and I enjoyed it like crazy. It was so much fun to read. It's set in academia, it's got the grumpy sunshine trope, it's got a slight Beauty and the Beast vibe to it, it's got enemies to lovers, it's a neurodiverse romance, it's got a lot of things going for it, lots of good tropes. Our main characters are both professors at this university. He's in biology and she is in communications. Max is our beastly hero. He kind of doesn't know how to interact with other people, and when he does, he comes across as a jerk. He just doesn't really like people anymore, and like a beast hero, he does have some scars and he also walks with a limp. Max is the grumpiest grump, and because of his grumpiness, he doesn't believe that he can win this prestigious academic fellowship, and that's where our heroine comes in. Holly is in the communications department and she's kind of forced to help Max out to turn him from a beast into someone who's a lot more presentable and a lot more nice. They do not get along, they pretty much dislike each other on sight, and the banter is so great. I had a lot of fun reading it. With them being such opposite people, them being this grumpy sunshine couple, they think that they don't have a lot in common, but they do. They grow so much closer because of this little makeover, and it was such an adorable read. I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about this one, but I highly recommend it if you love The Love Hypothesis and want more romances that are set in academia and also have the grumpy sunshine trope. My other contemporary romance recommendation is one that's not quite as rom-com-y as the other one. It's First Love Take Two by Sajni Patel. This one is a lot more intense and angsty, though I will say it's not quite as romancy as the rest of the list, just because it deals with some pretty heavy topics. There's so much else going on outside of the romance. The plot does overtake the romance at times. It's probably the biggest complaint about this book, that the plot, that everything else just overshadowed the romance, but I surprisingly didn't mind this. I just love the book as a whole, but I just wanted to put that out there because I personally would want to know this kind of stuff before going into a romance book. This is a second chance romance, one of my favorite tropes. It's an interracial romance. The heroine, Preeti, she is about to become a doctor, a medical doctor, and she is dealing with some severe anxiety. Then she finds out that not only is her new roommate her ex and the former love of her life, she also has to share a room with him and also share the same bed. Preeti and Daniel were so sweet together. I love their second chance romance. Daniel is a total sweetheart. The romance has so much good pining, and it does move at a fairly slow pace, but it really worked well for this story. And like I said earlier, the book does have some pretty heavy topics like mental illness and racism that are more at the forefront of the story, but those topics were done really well. I like the way the author handled these topics. The romance is great, it gets super angsty and emotional, and it's always a plus that it's got the roommates and only one bed trope. For my paranormal romance recommendation, I have Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue. This is the first book in her Souls trilogy. It's a very kinky monster slash horror romance between a demon hero and a human heroine. It's got some gray gothic vibes and the steam is insane. It's definitely one of the hottest books that I've read all all year. So we have the heroine Ray, who has just moved to the small town where her parents grew up. She's going to college there, and the hero Leon is a demon who's been forced to kill her, but he finds that he can't really go through with it and instead decides to protect her from this evil cult that wants to kill her. It gets pretty wild and intense and full of action. I also did read the sequel about a different couple, but it does follow the same timeline. But I love this first book a lot more. For my dark romance recommendation, this is the one series in the list. I'm gonna need you all to read the Cinderella trilogy by Kay Webster. I binged the heck out of all 3 books. I read them back to back. Like, I could not put these down. It was so addicting. The series is like a true trilogy. It follows one couple. Book 1 is Stroke of Midnight. Book 2 is Prince Charming, and book 3 is The Glass Slipper. And if you couldn't tell from these titles, it is a Cinderella retelling, but since it's Kay Webster, it's a very kinky Cinderella retelling. Technically, the series did start last year, like the first 2 books came out last year, but this 3rd book, the final book, came out this year, so I'm counting it for this list. It's a dark romance series, but I wouldn't call it anything too dark. It's not too violent or anything. It is mafia adjacent. It's pretty much a kinky sugar daddy retelling of Cinderella, and I was into it. It's also got a pretty big age gap. Winston is our filthy rich CEO hero who is twice the heroine's age, who is 18. Ash needs money for college because her dad took her entire college fund to spend on his new wife, so she goes to Winston for it. She becomes his sugar baby, and he literally pays her hundreds and thousands of dollars, a crazy amount of money to do stuff for him. It's a pretty wide range of things that she has to do for him, and it's not always sexual, but since it is Kay Webster, it gets very steamy. They get filthy here, and I loved it. It's also got a bit of suspense too with this rival mafia family. Winston's family, the Constantines, are an entire empire, and their rival family is part of the mafia, so there's really never a dull moment when you read this series. And my historical romance recommendation, this one was kind of hard to choose just because most of the historicals that I've read this year were mostly older books, like old school romances, but I did recently finish this new release and I really enjoyed it. It is The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shoup. It's book 2 in her Fifth Avenue Rebels series and the Gilded Age, so New York City, and I read it as a standalone and it was totally fine. What I loved about this one, besides the gorgeous cover, I love that it was a foodie romance. The heroine is a chef. She's secretly training to be a chef. She's an heiress, so she really can't be a professional chef, but she's been learning in secret from her family's hotel's chef. Alice is a shy wallflower, and of course Kit is a rake. It's your classic wallflower and rake couple. Kit also wants to dabble in food. He wants to open up his own supper club, and he wants to hire Alice's chef to do so. They make a deal with each other. Kit will teach Alice all the ways of seduction, all the ways of landing a man and getting herself a husband, and in return Alice will give Kit her chef's recipes. Of course, love is not part of this deal, but they fall in love anyway, and it's got so much good pining here. She thinks that he's never gonna be able to settle down, and he thinks he's not good enough for her. There's a little bit of angst there, and there's also some good jealousy on Kit's part when he sees Alice with other men, because she does need to find herself a husband, and she's trying out all the moves that Kit taught her. The chemistry and banter were great between them, and even though it's your typical kind of historical romance where the hero teaches the heroine the ways of seduction, I love the twist to it with the food, the foodie aspect, her being a chef, that made it more unique, and also the ending of the book was so freaking sweet. I loved it. So this is another Gilded Age historical romance from Joanna Shoup. I love her Gilded Age stuff, and if you love the pairing of a rake and a wallflower, you definitely need to read this one. Also, side note, historical romance readathon is coming up really soon, so hopefully you can join us next week, and be sure to check out our merch on our bonfire shop. I'm wearing the one that I designed. It's the OG historical romances one, and I love it. If you want to check out all the designs, link is in my description description. So those were my 5 romance picks to read before the end of the year, but I do have a bonus book that I also wanted to include. I've talked about it a little bit already in my best romances of 2021 so far. It's still one of my favorites this year. It's Real by Kennedy Ryan. This book was amazing. It deserves all the love, all the stars, and I need more people to read it. It's an intensely romantic and emotional read like usual from Kennedy Ryan. She always just blows me away with her writing and just how hard she can make me believe in her couple and their happily ever after. Her books are contemporary, but they almost have a fated mates vibe to it. That's how intense her romances are. Real is a Hollywood romance between a famous director hero and a very unknown actress heroine. Cannon picks Neva off of Broadway even though she's never acted for a movie before in her life. They work together on this biopic and sparks just fly between them even though it is very forbidden to have anything between them with him being a director and her being his actress. So it's forbidden, it's steamy, it's passionate. I just love this book so much and I can't wait for the rest of the series about different couples. Those are all the books that I think you should bump up your TBR and hopefully get to before the end of the year. If you have your own recommendations for books you think people should read, some new releases from this year that you highly recommend, please let me know. As always, links to everything will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all next time. Bye!